Sat Shri Akal, everyone. Welcome to the very first episode of the Mindful Web3 with Monica and Periwinkle. Great to have you guys on the very first episode of Mindful Web3. It's fantastic to have both of you. To kick things off, can you share a bit about how your journeys in the crypto world have evolved since we last spoke individually? And what has been the biggest change for you professionally in the recent months? Monica, let's start with you.
So, since we last spoke, it's been several weeks, but in the crypto world, it feels like already several months. So, we are making a lot of progress on the side of Caspa and its technology, which then reflects also on the communication challenges. And I feel like we're at a very interesting point where we have a lot of new narratives that we're trying to push. So, whether it is on AI and how we incorporate that, or balancing between the very serious narratives of the L1 technology and also degen activity that we're trying to introduce. Also, a lot of new partnerships in the ecosystem and a lot of new products that we want to push, and interesting sponsorship for an athlete that we will announce soon. So, quite a lot of challenges, but also very exciting things that we're just waiting to let the community know about.
That's awesome. What about you, Perry? How are things at your end?
Yeah, a lot of changes here too, actually. I know I was just saying before we jumped on the recording, I recently relocated myself to Jakarta to be closer to all of my engineering team. So we're really at the kind of like lock in and move phase. We went live on the Bitcoin testnets earlier this year. So we've got a lot more activity up. Most of the protocol code is fully functional. People are starting to build full apps. We're moving towards mainnet launch at this point, so I think we're really really excited. You can go and download the wallet and do the transactions and see it come through the other side now. So we're excited to be hitting the event circuit again in the next couple of weeks and really trying to get just more people building in our system and our ecosystem and getting moving.
Let's hope for the best. And when are you guys planning to release?
So if you want to play around with it, you could do that now. It's on Bitcoin testnet 4. And in terms of going to Bitcoin mainnet, probably sometime this summer.
Hmm. Awesome. And let's move on. Since both of you have made incredible strides in your careers, and it's clear that women are making more of an impact in the crypto space, how do you see women working together to lift each other up in the space? And that's still growing, especially in leadership positions. Let's start with you, Perry.
Yeah, so I think it's really cool, but it's also kind of sad every time I hop on a call to meet the core team from a potential partner and I see that one of the founders is a woman. I'm always like, oh wow, it's unexpected still, and it's sad that it's unexpected, but it's always like I'm seeing it more. It's always exciting to see, and particularly for myself, being very technical, being the CTO of my company. Um, I I'm always excited to meet other women in the space who are in the technical roles. We're still getting there, I think, on that, and figuring out how to bring more people in. But I appreciate a lot, at least it appears to be my experience, that it is a supportive environment, that you do see the women in the space being like, that's really great. Like, I always want to see more of it, supporting each other. I think, I'm in so many of these Telegram threads with the Crypto Girls Club and the SheFi, and um, it's always like, I think, a really supportive, because crypto is so fun. I think there's just a lot of this room to have these, like the para baddies and everything, these things that are just so fun that I think makes it feel a lot more comfortable for women who are just getting into the space.
Correct. What about your take on this, Monica?
So I really agree with Perry and what she said, and I want to add to that I think it's also a number. I read a very interesting article that was also referenced by Malcolm Gladwell. So he references a researcher named Moss Cantor that explains that you don't need to only have role models, but you need to have a critical mass of a group. And then she refers to the number 35%, in which she explains that if there are more than 35% of representatives of a group, then you avoid tokenism. So I think we don't just want to see certain women in positions of power, but we want to have more women in order to normalize the fact that there are women in the group. And in order for those women not to be treated as the representatives of all women, but as their own persons. So I think that's something that I would like to see more of.
That's really insightful, Monica. Thanks for that. Let's move on to a bit of mental health and mindfulness. That's what this series is all about. How does mindfulness contribute to emotional well being in high pressure environments like you all are really working in? Um, let's start with you, Monica. What's your take on this?
So I think it's really important in order to allow you to, I'd say, compartmentalize the work that you do and to have the ability to separate things that might be very stressful or high pressure from your own life or from other areas of your life. So I think it's very important to be able to say, okay, there are moments of time where I need to be very focused, where I need to do a lot of things that might be difficult, but then to have the ability to set that aside and also enjoy other areas of life. So I think it's very important in that sense. But also, I would say that mindfulness is very important to get the job done well. So, in order to be able to concentrate on what you do, in order to be able to prioritize correctly everything that you need. So, to make sure that you are in the right headspace, not just to do work, but to do work in a way that is smarter and better.
Perry, about you, since you are currently working in a high pressure environment and you are working towards a probable release, and then there is a constant pressure in the background from the investors or the probable uh, users who are trying to use your platform. So how do you believe mindfulness can contribute to emotional well-being? Because end of the day we are humans, right? We are spiritual, we are humans, right? So you have left everything and shifted from the states to uh like Jakarta, right? Which is a totally different society. It has its own values. I'm not sure how they are treating you at the moment, because it's part of the Asian subcontinent, right? So tell us about your experience about how mindfulness is contributing to the emotional well-being.
Yeah, no, I actually really agree with what Monica has said. And I think there can be this misconception when people talk about like founder mode, right? And I think there can be a misconception that that means you have to be self-sacrificing like all the time. I've obviously made a lot of choices in the last couple of months to really make this founder thing, right? And I don't want to call it that, but to make the glitter the center of my life, right? Um, but to be able to do that and spend as much time as I do on that, I still have to be able to walk away from it a little bit, right? So I've actually started kind of leveraging the time zone. I mean, I'm in the same time zone as my team, but a lot of partners I'm not. So I take the earlier time in the day when people in the US are still asleep. I make sure I try to cook. I go I run my errands. I have my phone on me and I can answer a message if I need to, but I kind of take that time for myself, right? And I work pretty much all day, every day. Um, but I have the time to step away from it and take care of myself. Um, and I would say, particularly as an engineer, it's not even necessarily stepping away from work, but just stepping away from Telegram or Slack or whatever it is, right? But seriously, I'm still working, but I will say, okay, I'm I'm not going to answer messages for the next couple of hours. I'm going to stop. I'm going to just be working on the code, or reading the white papers I need to be reading, or doing whatever I need to be doing to build. Because I actually love doing that, right? That's how I got into this in the first place. So even that can be, it's still working, but I think there is a mindfulness in saying, like, I'm just going to do the work that I want to do without trying to juggle 7,000 Telegram threads.
Correct. Let's move on to the next question. How can mindfulness be integrated into daily routines to support a mental health and help women manage external pressures like societal expectations and workplace challenges? I'm sure a lot of women will be consuming this podcast, so it would be really a very deep insight from the founders themselves. Let's start with you, Monica.
Okay, so first of all, it's important to note that I don't think there is a one size fits all solution. And I think many people might have various ways of incorporating mindfulness into their lives. But I think there are several things that I find that work for me. So the first thing is that, quite in a cliche way, I started doing yoga, which I find helps. So I was a bit of a yoga skeptic at first, but I think it is the habit of forcing yourself to disconnect. Even if it's for an hour, I think it's a good thing to incorporate and to know that there is going to be an hour where you're not going to be available and it's okay. And you're just going to do something for yourself. So I think that's one thing. The second thing is that I really like taking notes. So I really like starting every day with writing down whatever it is that I need to do, making sure that I don't forget anything, even writing the prioritization of what I want. So noting next to things, what are the dates that I want to do them, or whether it is priority number one, number two, and so on. So I find that it really helps to clear my mind, and it takes away the feeling of having to juggle things and not being sure of what those things are. And also, I would say finding a support network outside of work. So, to make sure that you have this one person or two people that you can just talk about things and not even get advice, but just get them to listen to what you have to say. And at times, just say, oh, you're right. And to acknowledge the way you feel about things. So, I think that really helps.
What about you, Perry? How do you manage your daily routines to support your mental health?
Yeah, I agree with everything you've just said there. Especially about having like support outside of it, right? Again, because like this company is all I do with my life right now, basically. But I'm really fortunate to have really excellent friends back home in the States. And, one of my best friends, she doesn't work in this, but she has also a super frustrating like professional existence. And so we have like a regularly set time. It's like a standing call. It feels like a work call, but it's not, because we just get on the phone and we just talk about like, this is dumb, that's dumb, and did you watch the last episode of Drag Race? And like we just make sure that we take an hour every week to just catch up about my life and her life, and a lot of times that ends up like whining about work or whining about things in general, but having that connection with your friends, or if you have a partner that fills that role, or your family, whatever it is, people that provide that. Um, in terms of workplace challenges, I think that was always a mixed bag, because I'm always hesitant to like point at things and be like, this is so gendered, but also sometimes things are, right? And the way that people expect to interact with you as a woman can be very different than the way people expect to interact essentially with a man. And so being in some of these spaces, I think particularly as a founder or as an executive, where you're needing on a professional level to be sometimes quite assertive and strong in a way people don't necessarily expect of women can be challenging to navigate. I'm very grateful personally. I know last time we talked, I was just like, I'm just very grateful for my team. I was just going to say it again. I'm very grateful for my team. I don't feel like I have any problems with them with that. It's always like we're just a bunch of programmers and we all have like high levels of respect for each other. I think that's actually somewhere where like a more traditionally like feminine attitude actually has been really positive because I'm like, yeah, I'm your boss, but like I'm not like mean, you know. Uh, and they're really good at what they do. So at least for me, that hasn't been as much of an issue inside the house. Obviously, then when you're having to go out and engage with the broader world, sometimes it's always the case. But I guess.
As leaders in technology and communications, I think this panel, we have a great panel today where we have leaders from both technology and communication. So we'll have broader perspectives. What role do you guys think organizational culture plays in supporting mindfulness and mental health? Let's start with you, Betty.
Yeah, I think I was sort of just getting to this at the end of my answer to my last question, but I think I find as a manager, if you are nice to people, you often get that back. I think a lot of people make the mistake of assuming that you'll be taken advantage of if you're nice to your employees, and I think that's so short-sighted. Um, so the culture that is like tolerant of failure and tolerant of imperfection, I think is so important. I get in the chat sometimes and I'm like, hey guys, you built a whole bunch of stuff since I last looked at this area of the code base. I don't understand it. Somebody explain it to me, right? And me being vulnerable there and saying like, somebody help me out with this, walk me through what you did. Maybe I have questions. Maybe I ask you to make some changes. Um, but it lets you know that then you could do the same to me, right? If you don't understand something, I'm not gonna be upset at you for that. If I send you a spec document and you're like, this makes no sense, please add more details. I'm like, I fair enough. So I think it's important, particularly as a leader, always to just give the energy that you want to receive. Um, and that has to involve space for people to fail and succeed, right?
So, in summary, I would say glitter finance is uh, building it, building itself into an organization where priorities are worked on more, and not exactly gender specific issues are not something that really is a concern here, which is a thing which is really good. And let's move on to Monica. So Caspa is something which is being talked about everywhere on the internet, and you guys are upcoming with a crescendo hard fork, which is something everyone is really talking about. So there are some high pressure roles being played upon you guys. So how do you tackle it, and how do you think organization is how do you think the culture is really working on this?
Yeah, so I think internally for us, there are some very interesting aspects that we try to incorporate. So the first one being, I'd say, culture of discourse. So it's very important for us in our meetings to make sure, first of all, that there is good moderation or whatever conversation we're having, and to make sure that everyone is heard, but also to, I guess, take certain things with a positive attitude. So we are aware of the fact that there are people sitting at the table from various cultures and various places around the world. And I think it requires us to understand that we might not always understand each other, or we might say things and have them interpreted in another way. So it really requires us to say, okay, I'm going to interpret everything that I hear in the most positive way, and to really try and understand and not assume things about the other side. And always remember that we share the same goal. So I think that's very important. Also, I think we do embody a spirit of decentralization in the sense that there are no hierarchies. And this is something that I really appreciate. So, of course, we have deference to the core dev team, and they're awesome and they do amazing things. And they never let it show. So they never take like more power or try to enforce their opinion. But I think it's very important to what other people have to say and ask questions and even open to various points of views. So I think oftentimes you have the ability then to say, okay, this is something the community wants, or maybe we should try and make sure that we don't only program, but we also talk about things, or maybe we try to balance between the work on the technology and also doing the events and so on. So I think they're very open to that, which is once again something I really appreciate. And another thing that I find very important also in the sense of mental health is to have opportunities for reflection and I'd say play mode. So the ability not just to execute, but to come up with fun ideas and to think about things. And as Perry said, to feel like you can say things that are even wrong and it's okay because we are now simply throwing things and seeing if they stick.
That was exactly what my next question was. What strategies do you guys think that organizations have adopted or should adopt to reduce stigma around mental health, particularly in tech and communication? Because these are two different fields altogether. Let's start. Let's continue with you only, Monica. What's your take on that? What do you think organizations should do to adopt uh, the reduction in stigma around mental health?
So the first thing is not to penalize it. And here, especially now living in an EU country, I find that Europe does it very well in the sense that there are rules and regulation that see mental health issues as just any other illness or sickness that one can encounter and offer protections for employees. So I think that's a very important step to see that you have some sort of defense and that your job is not on the line if you do suffer from mental health. So I think that's a very important step. The second one is having managers that are open to discuss this in a non judgmental way and see what they can offer to help with it. And it doesn't have to be drastic, but I think it's even the ability to listen to someone and say, okay, let's try and figure out together what this means for your work and what we can do and come up with creative solutions. So I think that's definitely something.
Hmm. Perry, what about you? As a founder, as a technology head, what are the steps you take or your organization takes in order to reduce this stigma?
I think, the culture in Indonesia is a little different than it is in the EU, and I don't think that we actually end up addressing these issues directly. But I try personally to solve for it kind of just through a team culture in that sort of same way of being open, being honest. I try to make sure that I know what's going on in at least the core team that I manage directly, like their personal lives, even if it's just, you know, not that we're like best friends or anything, but many of my team members are at the point in their life where they're just getting married and are just having their first children. And so just encouraging things like, one of my core team members got married in the last couple of weeks. I'm just saying like, yeah, of course, man. Like if you need us to pick stuff up for you, so you like pick up tasks so that you can be there to help your wife finish setting up for the wedding, right? Like, of course, this is not a problem. You should do that. That's important. Um, or even just things like, oh, your son just turned 6 months old today. Like send a picture, like send a picture of your baby and everything. And the rest of my team is all male, but I think that there are obviously people who will always want to show you pictures of their babies, right? Like everybody does. That's not a woman thing. So for me, I mean, that's kind of what I try to do is just to, I guess, lead by example and show that, everybody's happy for you and your family, and you should feel like you can bring that part of yourself to work, and we're going to be supportive.
Hmm. Okay, that's a good answer. Let's move on to the next question. As an advice, what advice would you guys give to women who are struggling with balancing their personal and professional lives, especially in very high professional roles like yourself? Let's start with you, Perry.
I'm probably not the best person to ask this question because like I think I said earlier, don't really have a lot of, I think, balance in my actual hours. I work very hard to balance within my own like mental bandwidth, right? To make time to go to the gym, to make time to have my phone calls with my friends and my family. Um, but I don't have much of a personal life right now. I just moved to the other side of the world, so my friends, I make time to talk to them, but they're on a 12-hour time difference on a different continent. So the vast majority of my hours are consumed building this company right now, and that was a choice that I made personally, right? So I don't mean to complain there, um, but I don't have a family or children or any like sorts of legitimate responsibilities in my life, kind of outside of building this company. So Monica may be better posed to answer how she manages.
Do you manage and with the oncoming pressure which is currently going on with you guys with the upcoming release? How do you manage your family and your personal health and your um, own hobbies while managing the professional role?
So the first thing is, I'd say, set up even artificial limits. So, for example, something that was very important for me was the weekend. So, in terms of balancing, I felt like there are days during the week that I can work until very late, and that's okay. But during the weekend, this is a time frame where I want to dedicate completely to my family and friends. So then I made this balance, and it's a bit artificial, and I think people can choose what is their best time for relaxation or time that they can afford not to work. Obviously, not everyone can do that, but I think that helps. And also, I think trying to create a separation between the fact that sometimes things can be a bit unfair due to structural reasons, and yet it doesn't take away from your personal responsibility to work hard and to do well, and not to drag yourself into a state of despair just because you might see some obstacles. So I think we can acknowledge the fact that there are systemic issues that go beyond our own line of work, and yet we still want to do what we can in order to try and improve.
Hmm, that's a good answer. Thanks for that, Monica. Let's move on to the next question. Um, since you guys represent two different industries altogether, maybe like these are two different roles in the same industry, but they are a different industry in itself as well, right? And I'm sure there must be some of the significant hurdles that you have faced while you started off, because this is unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know, it is traditionally a male dominated industry, right? So, what have been some of the most significant hurdles you faced, and what advice would you offer to young women wanting to enter this field? Let's start with you, Monica.
So I think what I encountered at times is, especially with the people who don't know me, that they might not take me seriously. And maybe it's the gender issue, maybe it's my age, I'm relatively young. So I think this is something that happens. And my advice would be not to let it be a deterring factor, because I think oftentimes when you're not being taken seriously, it's very easy to take offense by, getting a perplexed look when you say something in a meeting, or to have a doubt cast upon your comment. And my advice would be to speak out anyway, and to just participate and not, I guess, turn yourself into a small presence just because some people might not have the initial respect for you. And I would also advise to try and create alliances. I think oftentimes it helps if you have ideas that you are certain of and you know that are good, but before even bringing them up, to make sure that other people see it that way. And I think it really helps then having people that back you. And I would also say getting to know people informally, which also helps, because the more people know you outside of the context of we're only having a Zoom meeting, but actually see you as a person who value you, then you can do a better job.
Perry, let's come to you. What do you think is that one significant hurdle that you faced in your early times? I'm sure development is something that you don't find a lot of women doing that nowadays, especially in the crypto world. So, what's that significant hurdle that you faced?
So I've been in and out of crypto for 13 years at this point, which is really, really, really long by crypto standards. So I think my take on this is different than many other women in the space, just because like crypto came from this very cypherpunk space, which I think tends to be much more anon, and therefore gender doesn't up, and then it's this very meritocratic situation. It's not like that anymore, right? Obviously, there's the deep tech piece of the industry, and I spend a lot of time in that with the sort of undoxed core dev crowd that I don't find I have any issue being taken seriously with, because you have cred and they have cred, and everybody just wants to sit down and jam about cryptography or something. And then you have the more DGen Chad crowd, right? Which is a little bit, I think, more the experience that Monica is talking about. I certainly have the same thing, but I've come up with it, I think, through the years. So to me, it's just like I roll my eyes at it. It is what it is, and you're like, yeah, I know you. I've known a million of you, and I know how to handle you. But um, I appreciate about this space, though, relative to other spaces I've been in, that it is something where your credentials get taken very seriously. It's super annoying to always have to like wear those on your chest, but I appreciate it as soon as you sort of like front load that information. I find that I don't have trouble after that, right? So people don't look at me and assume I have this long history in the space, I have these degrees or expertise or whatever. But I find if I just start right out there in my 30-second elevator pitch on myself, things go pretty smoothly. People are willing to believe that I have the experience that I have, and then treat me as a peer in that way. I wish I didn't have to do it. It's annoying, but
Let's talk more about this empowerment, Perry. Let's continue this discussion. What does empowerment in the crypto industry look like to you? How can women's influence and leadership be expanded further, not just within the crypto space, but in other tech sectors as well?
yeah, I will say this is actually somewhere that I think crypto is different. Having been in traditional cybersecurity, having been in academia, and then being in crypto, people are gonna like look at me like I'm a little off here. I actually think crypto is the easiest place to be a technical woman. There are cultural things which are different, but it comes back to what I was saying is like the meritocracy of it. If I go to a party at a crypto conference, everybody assumes I'm a plus one, right? So it's like, who are you here with? Not what do you do? And I'm sure if I was in there, like, what do you do? But I can very quickly come back and be like, yeah, I'm the CTO of a company that I founded. Here you go, da 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 da. And it's great. Now we're talking shop, right? Like, it's a boys' club, but I'm one of the boys now, and it's fine. My perspective is fine. Whereas in traditional cybersecurity or in academia, I found that you could never overcome that. It was always like, so are you a PI hire? Do you really know what you're talking about? And how did you get into that PhD program? And so on and so on and so on. So from my perspective, at least, and I would be really interested to hear what Paul thinks about this in communications because it's a totally different set of professional norms. From my perspective, at least, in the very technical side of the house, crypto is easier to be a woman because like your credentials speak for themselves and people like take that at face value.
Yeah. Your smart contract code speaks better for you than you actually do. And that's the good thing.
It's a good thing.
Let's move on to Monica. What advice would you give to women who are just entering the industry today, and how can they find mentorship and create pathways for themselves given the progress that's been made over the years?
So I think, as Perry said, there is quite a distinction between if you're doing technological work and if you're doing, let's say, work that supports the technology. So I agree that the tech sphere is much more meritocratic.
Which I'd like to know if there's a difference, I guess.
I think there is, because I think there is a lot of respect for the technology. And I think here there are, I guess, objective ways of assessing you as a person. So whether it is your education or simply things that you've done, and you can really point to that. And in other roles, you need to refer, I guess, to other means. And my way would be to fix everything with words, just because I believe that ultimately everything can be explained. And ultimately, if you have a good idea, then it will win. But it does require working much more on the ability to package your ideas and sell them in such a way that they do seem credible. And I would say, especially if those ideas are non technical, so things like what can we do for marketing, then you need to make sure that they do get the credit they deserve, even though they are not technical. So, for example, what we have to do a lot is we need to translate a lot of technical terms into more layman terms often to market. And then it is up to me to present this as a challenge. So, to explain that even though it is extremely complicated and the technology is very cool, we do need to make sure that we also speak in a language that people who don't understand the technology would appreciate.
Thanks for that answer, Monica. Just a curious question for both of you guys. Today's time is especially like built around the social media trends, and whoever I have met, I would say most of the people that I've met, not exactly all of them, but they are currently facing this anxiety, this social media anxiety, right? This ability of like constantly scrolling through different reels, being obsessed with what other people are thinking about them, because this is how the industry chooses to stock you. How do you guys like move away from the stigma, this stigma especially? Let's start with you, Perry. What do you do? What exercises do you do to stay away from this mental impact, which I think most of the people are currently facing? How do you save yourself from that mental anxiety?
So I'm cognizant about my social media engagement, and I've really gone through phases over the years. So currently, like, I've never had TikTok. I don't think that I need that. I used to be very active on Instagram. I haven't like taken it off of my phone, but I don't really use it that much. Um, Part of it is like I know in the phases, like the times in my life where I've spent many, many hours on social media, it's because I've been otherwise unbusy and unfulfilled, right? I just don't do it now, and it wasn't really like a conscious effort to be like, stop being on Instagram. It was like I am busy. I have a lot of things I'm doing. And if I don't have the sort of downtime where I'm seeking out, like, oh, I have to have something to be consuming right now. I need the stimulation of that, right? It just doesn't happen. Um, Twitter is the one you just can't get away from in this industry, right? Because that's, a lot of useful technical discourse does happen on Twitter, and then a lot of really dumb crap happens on Twitter too. But, you know, I hear that you're supposed to be a personality, you're supposed to be a reply guy and have this presence so people know who you are, and this is a thing you. So I've made an effort to be more active on Twitter over the last couple of months. Sometimes I catch myself just doom scrolling, and I try not to do that. And sometimes I am on Twitter for a long time, but I am replying to things that are thoughtful and engaging, and I gain a follower here and there. So that's maybe more of a business thing. But yeah, I think you have to be just careful about it. The things that you don't need, you can just get rid of. Twitter, you can't get rid of. I'm going to be honest about that one. So that's maybe about curating your feed. If you want to see 17 videos of Montoya, great. If you want to talk endlessly about the halftime show at the Super Bowl, great. But if you don't, just follow a bunch of crypto people and then use the following tab instead of the For You tab. And I think you get away out of the algorithm that way.
That's a very good summary. Not to use the For You tab and just to use the Following tab, which is a good summary. And also finding or seeking fulfillment apart from the social media in the regular life as well, which is also a very important aspect, which is a great answer. Thank you for that, Perry. Let's get on your take, Monica. What do you think about this?
So I really agree. And I think I'm quite fortunate that I don't have to represent myself on social media for work-related issues. So whatever I communicate for the foundation and for what CASPA needs. And in that sense, I think it really helps because it's not as if the comments that we get are directed towards me personally, but it is towards my professional self, which I think is something that I can handle or one can handle better because you know that the discussion is more on point. So I think maybe that's a better way of using social media. And other social media, I don't necessarily have a lot of time to use, but I did try to create an escapist place in Instagram. So it's mostly about cats, food, Japan, and art. So it would be some scrolling in between that at least is not about how people perceive you, but rather just looking at pretty things.
The other thing I would say, specifically with like crypto Twitter, is if you get out in the event circuit and you've met a lot of people IRL, like so many people, their profile picture is an NFT or it's something else, and you have no idea, they just seem like random anons. When you put faces to these names, it does soften things a lot, right? Because you can have then a back and forth with somebody and just be like, okay, but I actually know him, right? And he's not, it feels a lot less of a personal attack and it feels a lot more like an actual social engagement.
Makes sense. Thank you for that answer, Monica, and thank you for adding in between as well, Perry. As we wrap up, you both are trailblazers in your own right. And what's that one personal and professional goal that you are working towards next? And how can our listeners support or follow along? Let's start with you, Perry.
Yeah. Like I said earlier, we're getting ready to get the product out there. So if you're interested in exploring what we're building, I would encourage you to do that. You can go and sign up for our testnet. We'll have an incentive campaign that we announce here shortly. So you can download our wallet and test out all of our apps, try to build something, get your new glitter NFTs and all of that. If you go to docs.glitter.fi or dev.glitter.fi. I'll follow up with you in the right links in the show notes. But yeah, I mean that would be the biggest thing for us right now is like we want to see people trying out our stuff that we're building. So give it a try and let us know what you think. Even if what you think is that it sucks, like we want to fix it. So yeah.
Awesome. What's your take on this, Monica?
So the main challenge for me, I would say, is to spread the word about crypto in general and Caspa specifically, and to attract new audiences, mostly around getting people to understand the usability of Caspa, and not just the fact that it has cool technology, but actually highlighting how it can help people in their lives, what's in it for them. So I think this is the main thing. And then the way the audience can help with that is if they want to hear more of what we have to say and why we are good and valuable, they can, of course, contact me, and I can either connect them to the great people we have on the developing team, or if they want to have me for their podcasts, events, and so on. We have great things to show, and we're looking for more stages.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Monica. On this note, let's conclude this episode. I would really like to thank you, Perry and Monica, for giving out your valuable time for this episode. I'm sure people would really enjoy this conversation and would definitely take notes on how to manage a stress free life, because this is coming from the greats, both from tech and like management and marketing. Thank you for your time, guys. It was a pleasure having you. On an
Thank you.
ending note, would you like to say something, Perry?
Sure. Yeah, I think that for me the biggest thing here is I've actually always found crypto to be, relatively speaking, a very welcoming place, and I would love to see more women, particularly technical women, try it out. And like Monica said, my DMs are open. Please, if you're looking for that sort of mentorship or introduction, I'm always happy to help people.
Awesome. What about you, Monica?
Oh, and once again, want to thank you for having this podcast, because I think even initiating this conversation is very important in order to get people to understand that we're all people and it's okay to talk about the way we interact with each other and the way this industry impacts us. So I think it's a very good start for people to normalize the way they feel, but also manage it better.
I hope we get more such amazing participants like yourself in the upcoming episodes, and I, I'll I'll be honored to have them, and we'll ask some more mindful questions. And yeah, thank you for your time, guys. Have a nice one. Bye
Yeah.
bye.